Hi, I'm Dan Comiskey, and welcome to the Bridge Podcast. This channel is dedicated to bridging the communication gap between leadership and the field. Today we have a fantastic guest. We learned a lot about him. I'm not going to tell his story because I'm going to let him tell you for it, but I will give you a hint. I played football against him, and I played football with him in the Canadian Football League, and now we're both in the same league, and that's the League of Safety. So he's actually working as a safety advisor in Edmonton, Alberta, and he's doing a great job bringing the stuff that he learned in football to the field. So I hope you enjoy the show. This is going to be the first of two segments, and please subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely like. Don't dislike, just like. Craig Carr, welcome to the Bridge Podcast, man. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
It was an effort for us getting on here today. For anybody watching, we're a couple of men that know about technology. We understand that it exists, but sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it's a little rough. Okay, so I want to dive right in and I'm just going to pepper you with a few questions and a lot of questions by the end of the day. But let's go back to your draft year. And what school did you go to?
University of Manitoba. I went to U of M. University of Manitoba. Bison's Pride. Bison Pride, yeah.
Awesome.
Man.
And then you were drafted in 2000.
Correct.
And tell me about that. Were you knew what was happening? You were ready for it?
Man, yeah. Interesting story. So I lived with four guys, and all four of us had aspirations, to get drafted. The first year, Franz Clarkson, one of my roommates, he got drafted. I was there with Will Loftus, Wayne Weathers. We had a bunch of guys that went to the CFL. So it was kind of like you went to U of M. If you went there to play football and you were, an All-Canadian or your top, 15%, there's a good chance you're going to get drafted. Going into my draft year, my roommate got drafted the year before. And there was two other guys, aside from myself, that we all thought were going to get drafted. So my draft year was kind of like a big thing. My first year came in All-Canadian, which was awesome, cool. No one really knew who I was. Second year, they called the sophomore jinx. I didn't get All-Canadian status. But then my third year, I had Willard Reeves, who was my position coach.
Okay.
And I had him the first 2 years, and he was gone. And then they had another coach come in who was from one of the local high schools. And at that point, I was just on a different mindset. I'm like, listen, I don't have, one of the best coaches coaching me. So I'm going to set some goals for myself. And if I attain those goals, I'm going to enter and declare early. So I entered the draft early. Got drafted. I was 11th pick overall. I went to Edmonton and super excited. Didn't really have much direction or knowledge about, the process. I went to the combines, tested really well in the combines. And it's just kind of funny because the year that I got drafted, there was a lot of, you could say, premier backs in Canada because Eric Lapointe, kind of set the groundwork for Canadian running backs. The year I came out, there was Mark Nora, myself, a few other Canadian, Simon Buffalo. There was a bunch of Canadian running backs. So you got to remember, prior to me, Canadian running backs were like, if you get drafted, you're a fullback, And yeah, so
Now
my
back up a
draft.
second. Tell me about
Yeah.
your relationship with Willard Reeves. I had the luxury,
Oh man.
I had the great experience of riding with
Yeah.
him at a golf tournament
Yeah.
out in Saskatchewan
Yeah.
one year, and it
Yeah.
was just a.
And so he is by far one of the best coaches, mentors anyone in sports could have. I mean, you see his sons, right? Obviously, Ryan Reeves playing in the NHL and how he brings and how he plays, how he fights. Willard, encouraged and taught you to be tough, and not just not stupid tough, smart tough.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget one of the things he said to me. One of my first games, he said, I got hit in practice and I had a swollen knee. So I went and got it drained, and I figured, I get my knee drained, I'm not gonna miss a game. He's like, no, you're gonna play this week and actually you're gonna practice today. And I was like, what? What do you mean? I just got my knee drained. He's like, listen, if you are going to be successful in professional sports or in this sport in particular, you need to learn to play with pain. And I'm like, play with pain? He's like, yeah, there's a difference of being injured, and being hurt. And playing with pain is a part of the game. You have to be able to differentiate when you can't go any further or when you can just, endure through it. And I thought, this is sadistic. This is a sadistic coach. But then I went out in the next game, I rushed for 200 and some yards. And that kind of set the tone for me moving forward with my career. It's just like we put our own roadblocks in front of us sometimes, and sometimes we have to be, encouraged and pushed to go through it. And when you persevere and push through that point, when you say to yourself, I can't do anymore, you just open up like an unlimited avenue of things you can do and accomplish. So I hold that. I've always held that. I coach now. I coach younger kids, and that's one thing that's one message I push on. Is like you have to learn to play with pain, and again, differentiating when you can and can't, what you can and can't do is, I think that's the personal journey that each athlete has to go through. Yeah, I was fortunate. Like he taught me a lot of little things just about the game and being mentally tough, what it means to be a competitor and how to compete, and I carry that on and pass that on to a lot of the athletes that I coach now. So I consider myself extremely lucky. Great mentor, great coach, great friend, players coach. He's got a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
But yeah, great dude.
I had a few hours with him one day, and I walked away from that just thinking that he was one of the most hardcore people I'd ever met.
Yeah,
So we've got to
yeah,
remember that name. Man.
yeah.
Yeah, good fella. So then you're now coaching. What age are you coaching?
I coach a variety. I coach varsity football, U15, bantam, pee wee. Adam, I coach, and again, it's a spectrum, right? I just love to coach kids and teach them how to compete. I think that's an important thing, especially at young athletes at this age. 11 to 15 is a very intricate age for young men and women. Just as they grow into their bodies and learning to like, oh, he's bigger than me or he's faster than me. Don't size him up. You have to figure out a way to beat him. Like we have that innate sense because we know how to compete. We can turn this. But for a young individual who's undersized or lacks confidence, just encouraging them and giving them the tools to kind of like, you have to think and you got to be quick. I enjoy seeing these young athletes transition into competitors like warriors.
Yeah.
Like a guy coming in the training camp is no different than a kid trying out first year for a sport. And by the time you get playoffs, when you're playing in the championship game, it's lights out. And seeing young athletes get that switch where they're like, "Let's go! I'll run through a wall for you. I will run
You
through a
can
wall
see
for
the
you."
difference.
You can see
You
a
can
difference.
see the
Yeah,
switch go. Yeah.
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 So for me, I enjoy just passing that knowledge, and it's not so much about the game; it's about the preparation, the consistency, the intensity, the attention to detail, like all those little things to propel you forward to being a better person, more successful in life.
Yes. Yes. That's well put. My son is 18, and he's
Okay.
just started playing contact sports for the first time in his life. He played rugby this year.
Oh, how do you
And
do? Did you enjoy it?
he did very well. Yeah, he's a big kid. He's strong, but he's been in karate and he's always been athletic, but was never into contact sports like we understand contact sports. And
Right.
the only advice I gave him is exactly what you just said. I said, listen, you have to understand that every day in practice, you're potentially going to get 60 or 80 seconds of
Yeah.
sheer pain,
Yeah.
and definitely in games you're going to get it every time you play. And the deal is, you have to keep on playing. You got to play
Yeah.
through it. You got to start understanding you love it. And by the end of the season,
100%.
he was like, "I understand. Like rugby's a
That's
tough
cool.
sport, man. I respect that sport.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's neat to hear. It's funny because that is a universal rule, right?
Man, it's so
Yeah,
universal and it's cool to see it. Like I said, I enjoy like that is why I coach because I love seeing them when they come in. They're like, they won't look at you in the face. They don't want to shake your hand, but by the end of the season, they're like, when they see you and they look you, then the eye, it's like we've been through war together, and it's a
yeah,
mutual. It's a mutually understood language that I don't have to say it. When I look at you, it's like game recognizes game. When you see
yeah.
when you see guys that have game and you see them, you're like, yo, man, you did your thing. They're like, yeah, I did my thing, and it's just like good for you. So I enjoy passing that on to young athletes.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so then now you've been drafted. You went to Edmonton,
Yep.
and your first year in Edmonton was 2000,
Yes, it was.
right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. And
talk to me that
I
experience
didn't
as a
have
rookie coming in.
any direction. I didn't have no one sat me down and said, "Listen, this is what you need to expect. This is how, as a rookie, I came in there, and I mean, I was an All Canadian. I decided to enter the draft early. I'm like, I'm the man. And when I came in, I looked around. I was like, these are the athletes you guys have. I'm like, I'm a shoe in. I didn't know about you're going to be on a practice roster. I had no idea. So when
Mm-hmm.
I came in there with the expectation that whoever's starting tailback, like first of all, I'm taking your job. That's just for starters. Second of all, I'm taking your job. That was
Yeah,
my mentality. So I came in there, and Don Matthews was like, "Whoa, whoa, slow down. you're not seeing the field. I'm like, well, I'm out of here. And he's like, that's not how it works. I didn't care. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm like, if you don't play me, I'm out. And I remember Glenn Scrivener, he was our PA rep. He came and set me down. He's like, Craig, like, what's going on? I'm like, listen, I just went through training camp and I seen everyone that we have. I said, I'm better than half the athletes here. So if you don't put me on the field, I'm leaving. I didn't know. I didn't know. Dan, I had no idea, like, the process. Like, I had no idea. And he's like, well, that's not how it works. He's like, look, we'll put you on the IR. We'll put you for a week or two. Just hang tight. And then I'm like, cool. Because I'm not injured, so I'm not signing this document. So it's just kind of funny, man.
Great.
No. So then I'm like, okay, I win the first week, I signed it. Second week comes, they come back to me again. They're like, hey, I'm like, I'm not doing it. So then Don calls me in the office. He's like, what's the problem? I said, the problem is I'm not on the field. I'm not signing this document, so you must have let me go. And he was like, do you understand? I'm like, I don't care. I said, Don, I don't care. I want to play. And if you're not going to play me, let me go. And I'll go some. So sure enough, we had a conversation. He's like, you going to sign it? I'm like, nope. He's like, okay. So he legit, they released me. They let me go. I had an agent. I didn't really check in with my agent. I was just making decisions. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. So I told him, and literally I left the locker room, man, and I went straight to the airport, and there was a ticket for me to go to Montreal. So I went to Montreal. I went to the Alouettes, and I was there for 2 weeks.
So did
They
he
put me.
release you or trade you?
No, they released me.
And Montreal picked you up.
Yep. That within an hour, Montreal's like, "Ooh, come." So I went there, and they were like, "Listen." I had a conversation with Chocha. And Chocha's like, "Listen, we you just gotta chill for a week or two, so we make some room in the roster. We'll bring you on." I'm like, "Cool." So I went to Montreal. And I had a 2 week vacation. I just chilled up in a hotel. I was like, "Cool." And then all of a sudden, the day. So 1 week goes by, and it was a week four. Week four, the beginning of week four, it was a Tuesday. They like come down and sign your contract, and I was going down to sign a contract. And then the week before, they had because there was Troy Mills and Mark Nor who both got injured during
Yeah.
the game, and they were like, "Hey, listen, you've been through training camp," and I was literally at the door. I was at the Big O, and I was literally at the door to go in and sign. Like literally, like I could touch the door. My phone rings, and my agent's like, "Hey, where are you?" I'm like, "I'm just going in." He's like, "Sit down for a sec." I'm like, "For what?" He's like, "Look, both the backs got injured. You know the system. Would you consider going back?" I'm like, "Would I consider going back?" I'm like, "Am I going to play?" "Yep." "Okay. Can I get X, Y, and Z?" "Sure, done." "Okay, can I get A, B, and C?" They're like, "Done." They're like, "Just get on the plane." I'm like, "Cool." I literally turned around, Dan, went back to the hotel, packed my stuff, jumped on a plane, and came back to Edmonton. Signed, and then practiced, and that's when I got my first start in BC, and the rest was history. And I was there, like I said, I was there for the remainder of the year. I had beat Troy Mills and Mark Norrout, went into the off season,
Yeah.
got prepared to come back, and I want to say 2 weeks before training camp, playing basketball, ruptured my Achilles. And I was like, my God. And at that point, they were like, listen, you're a pencil starter. Like,
Yeah.
the gods were destined for me. And it was crazy because when I came back, Minnesota, the Vikings were like, hey, all we need is a little bit of, game film on you. And, I was going to go down to the NFL. And it just happened. Like I said, it's just weird how things sometimes work. And when I came back, because it would have been my second year, I would have been in my option year because I spent a year in option, and then with the NFL cuts, the whole nine, they signed an extension on me with Edmonton, and that second year, like I missed the entire season due to a ruptured Achilles. And I will say, as much as I didn't like it, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me because I was on the sidelines. I got to hear the GMs and coaches talking about who's coming in, and I got to understand the business side of professional sports, especially in the CFL with, bringing guys in. And I learned so much just being there. I was like, wow, like it is a horrible business, but it's an amazing sport. It's an amazing game to play, but it's a horrible business. And to me, that was an eye-opening event. And then the following year, that's kind of when they got rid of Don. They brought in Machocha and the Ricky Ray because that was the Jason Moss and Ricky Ray era.
I remember that, man.
Yeah, they brought in the John Avery, and then it's just funny that I came back to training camp after my Achilles, and they were like, "Oh, you don't run the same, you don't this, you don't that." But it was just funny because I remember training camp, we had 12 running backs, and in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, half these guys can't hold a can of paint, but okay, let's compete. And then you get released the first time you get released, and I remember Higgins. I got my lunch tray. Hey, can I talk to you for a sec? Yeah, it's a numbers game. We like you. Just don't look like you run the same. So I'm gonna ask you to leave. And I'm like, leave what? Leave, like, I don't understand. Like, I've never been cut to that point. I've never not made a sports team. So when he was talking, I had
Yeah.
no idea what he was talking about. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I need you to. I'm like, you need my playbook. I'm like, for what? You need to make copies? I was like, what? You need to make copies? He's like, no,
Wow.
we need it back. So what am I supposed to do? He's like, well, so and so's here is going to take you back to the airport. There's a ticket for you. And I was just kind of like, can I eat my burger for at least? Like, it just didn't register.
Yeah.
I didn't register to me, man. So I went back to Montreal because that's where I was staying, living at the time. And Will Loftus was there, and it's just a crazy story how, one game I was there for, I want to say 2 weeks, not even, and then Will's like, come to the game. So I go to the game, and all of a sudden, boom, Mike Pringle gets injured. They had Lawrence Phillips and Thomas Haskins. Next play, LP gets injured. Next play, Thomas Haskins gets injured. And I was just on the sideline, and Dr. Lacroix is like, hey, you want to play ball? I was like, yeah. He's like, don't go anywhere after the game. And later the game ended, and Matthews came by and was like, hey, you want to play? I'm like, yeah. Are you ready to play? I'm like, of course. He's like, cool. Be here tomorrow at 8. And I came next day. I was there at 8, signed a contract, and boom,
Amazing
we
how
went
they
on.
treat running backs, man.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah.
It's funny hearing it from you because I mean, obviously I saw it, but you get used to seeing people come and go. You
No,
know as well as I
100%.
do. Like you just do. You get and everybody's got their own story. Old linemen they treat
Yeah,
a little bit differently, right?
yeah,
But yeah, like you're expected to get what 3-4 years, tops.
yeah,
Really, you got
yeah,
9,
yeah.
right? So then
No,
you're in Montreal. How many years before? How many years were you in Montreal? That was
just the year. Just I was there just the 1 year. We win the Grey Cup, and then they started with we're gonna do this and do that, and you see the administrative side of wanting to take a pay cut, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I'm not having anything to do with it. So then they released me. I signed with BC like a couple weeks after, and then the GM at the time, Jim Pop, he was mad. He was hot that so he got on the phone with Wally and was like, this, that, you should be careful about this. And then Wally's like, well, why are they calling me? I'm like, I have no idea, man. I have no idea why. So then Wally got cold feet and was like, maybe we should wait. So then I went over and played in Europe. I went over to Rome and was over there for a bit. And then I literally came back. I was there for a year, which was a cool experience playing in Rome. Yeah, it was like it was a footballer's dream to play and travel to the country. That was really cool.
details
No,
of it, but
no,
like
no, no.
was it
It was amazing,
fun?
man. Yeah, more. It was more. It was more
Really?
because they pay for accommodations. They give you a car. They pay you in euros, which is like almost 3 times what you get here. And it was just funny because my contract. I'm like, hey, I want you to pay my mortgage back in Canada. And they were like, sure. They did. I'm like, okay, cool. So and we played every other week. So we play a week, have a week off. So it'd be nothing to like, you play a game, you go to Milan and play, or Bologna, and then all of a sudden I jump on a plane and go to France or go to Spain. Get on a plane and go to Spain, go there for 4 or 5 days, come back. Like, dude, it was what an amazing experience I had. And then when I came back, it was funny because you're only allowed a certain number of imports, American, Canadian. So what a lot of those teams would do is come to the U.S. or Canada and find guys that have played, Div 1 per se and have like say Italian, Canadian citizenship, and
Hmm.
they'd bring them over because they don't count against the roster. You know
Right.
what I mean? So it's like, okay, get it. So then, sure enough, that would happen, and they wanted to make some changes to bring in American quarterbacks, and so then I came back, and literally I came back to Canada, and I was here for not even 10 days, and then I got a call from Calgary. Higgins called me out of nowhere. Hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing anything. What are you doing? You in shape? Yeah. You want to play? Sure. And I basically came in, went practice, and then we played Labor Day. Like I made 2 practices, and then I'm starting in Labor Day.
Now you're going from one game every 2 weeks to 2 games in 4 days with that Labor Day
Yeah,
Classic.
yeah, literally. Man, I mean, again, it's just opportunity, right? Like opportunity presents itself, you take advantage of it. And I played in Calgary, and this was just prior. Again, it's just funny with my career because every time I went somewhere, there's been a premier back in front of me. Troy Mills and Mark Nora. I go to Montreal, Mike Pringle, Lawrence Phillips. I come to Calgary, there's Joffrey Reynolds. So there was Joffrey and there was Wes Cates. They got rid of Wes, and they kind of kept me and Joffrey. And then they're drafting John Cornish. And then I'll say this: I never and will never sell myself short to the devil. I say, right? And when they wanted to keep me, but they wanted me to take a pay cut, and I'm like, I'm not doing it.
No, that's
They're like, you realize if you don't, we're gonna cut you. So I was like, cut me, man. Like I'm not doing it. I'm telling you right now, like I'm not taking a pay cut. So if that's what it is, it's been cool. So then, bang, they released me, and then I kind of came back to I was back and forth with Edmonton, trying to get workouts, and they're like, hey, we'll bring you in, and then I'm just like, you know what, I'm good, man.
When you're ready, you were ready.
Yeah, I'm like I'm good. Like I don't like playing in the cold to begin with. Hate it. Like what am I beating my body up for? Like for what? Just for what? Just to say I played? Like if that's the case, I don't want to, and I didn't do it. So I'm like, cool, I'm out. And then that was
you won a Grey Cup your second year,
third year, and with Montreal when they released me. Yeah, when they released me, and I went to Montreal, like it's just suiting that I played Edmonton. Like Edmonton released me, and then I went to Montreal. And ended up playing in the Grey Cup and beating him.
That was in 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah, we played against each other. You beat us at home. I remember that game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was just it was just kind of like, is it? It's like a Cinderella tale, man. Is this actually happening? I'm like, the same team that released me, I'm playing them in the Grey Cup final now, and here I am, redemption. I was like, wow,